Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already.
Thank you all. I love that. And I love the idea of the tears and laughter. It's all included, right? It's all included. So welcome, everyone. I'm grateful you all are here. Those of you here in the chapel, those of you here online, thank you for joining us. And before I get started, I want to tell you something weird that I noticed today. So as I was finishing up preparing for my talk, I noticed that every time I do a message or a presentation, an animal makes its way in, right? I'm just writing and I'm creating, and all of a sudden some creature from the animal kingdom kind of pops its head in and like, I want to be in a story. Who am I to argue, right? And so tonight, that creature was an elephant. And I'm definitely not going to argue with an elephant. And that elephant is an elephant that you're probably familiar with at some point in your life, named Dumbo. It's a cartoon elephant, right? So what do we know about Dumbo? We know that he was a flying elephant, right? But he wasn't born a flying elephant. It might have been a long time since you've kind of made yourself familiar with Dumbo. So I want to remind you that he was not a flying elephant when he was born. He was a regular, cute little baby elephant, but he did have abnormally large ears. In fact, they were so large that he actually was a subject of much bullying. Oh, Cindy's making a sad face. Our animal kinship ministry person over here. And, you know, as elephants do, he had a really good friend, a mouse named Timothy. And one night, he and Timothy were running from some bullies, and they found themselves up in a tree. And Dumbo was like, how did we get here? And Timothy said, Dumbo, you flew. And Dumbo was like, me? I didn't fly up here. And he said, well, you flew, and I bet you can fly all the time. Now, you're really going to have a good shot at the circus because everybody's going to want to come see a flying elephant. Dumbo just refused to believe it until, God bless you, Timothy found a feather and gave it to Dumbo. And he wrapped his trunk around it and grasped it. And he believed that he held this feather in his trunk that he could fly. Dumbo was delusional, right? When our youngest child, Gray, was 4 years old, and they were learning to swim, they were not quite as brave in the water as our oldest child had been. They were a lot more cautious, and every time they get in the water, they have to have a life jacket. And we try to teach them to swim. They know we just got to keep my life jacket on and just stay real close to Mom and Dad. So we went on a snorkeling trip together. And we had our snorkeling masks and our snorkels and life jackets and had a great time. And when we came back home a couple weeks later, Gray wanted to go for a swim. I said, okay, get your life jacket, let's go. I don't need my life jacket, I just need my snorkel and my mask. And I said, well, wait a minute. And they said, no, I swim, but I swam so good because of that snorkel and the mask. I don't need my life jacket anymore. And I thought, okay, let's see what happens. So we took them down to the pool, and my husband jumped in to be on lifeguard duty. And wouldn't you know, that kid put on their snorkel, put on their mask, dove right into the pool and swam like nobody's business. And I even have a photo at home. At one point, they were facing on the pool swimming, and just with a thumbs up out of the water, like, told you it would work. Told you it would work. So for a while, Gray could not go swimming without that snorkel, and they eventually realized that they could release it. And Dumbo had his feather throughout the whole movie. Do you know he did not, until the last 5 minutes of the movie, realize that he could fly without that feather? It was only in the middle of a performance, can you imagine? He's up there flying with his feather, and he drops it. And in that moment, something arose in him. He realized that that was his divinely given gift, that he could fly, and he didn't need that feather anymore. No mask, no feather. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the delusion of thinking we need things to fly, right? If you haven't been here for a while, or if this is your first time at Wednesday Night Satsang, we've been covering a book by Jack Kornfield, who's a Buddhist teacher. It's called The Wise Heart, this book. And we're on chapter 15 and 16 tonight. And throughout the book, he really gives an overview of Buddhist teachings, and he weaves in a lot of his experiences, both from the monastery of his teacher and as well as his spiritual center that he set up later. And in our meditation earlier, when I asked you to observe a sign that said, hey there, you've been asleep for a long time. Isn't it time to awaken? That's the words on the actual entrance sign to the monastery that Jack Kornfield studied at. It's a friendly enough sign. Hey there, don't you want to awaken? Doesn't awakening sound fun? Well, then guess what happens though? Jack goes in to meet his teacher, Ajahn Chah, and the first thing after Ajahn Chah greets him, he says, I hope you're not afraid to suffer. Oh, not quite as friendly as a welcome. That took a turn, right? I imagine that many of the people going to a monastery in the woods are actually trying to escape their suffering. I imagine that many of them are going there hoping to find peace and leaving all the things that don't look like peace behind, right? So, but this is an invitation for us too. We don't have to go to a monastery. We can suffer right here together tonight. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. No, instead what we're going to look at how we can avoid suffering by peering into all of the ways that we too have been delusional. And the word delusional does have a little bit of a to it, doesn't it? We might not want to think of ourselves as delusional. So perhaps we can use the word mistaken. Perhaps we might want to use the words that we don't have the correct understanding. We can maybe hold ourselves with a little more compassion than if we call ourselves delusional. But if delusional feels good for you, go ahead and use it, right? So all the times that we are looking at something out in the world as if it's going to bring us happiness, or that our happiness is contingent upon things looking a certain way, that's a time that we've been delusional. Anytime we think we need a feather to fly or snorkel to swim, right? That's a delusion. The Buddhist principle on delusion says this, that delusion misunderstands the world and forgets who we are. Delusion gives rise to all unhealthy states, and we can free ourselves from delusion and see with wisdom. And so if we want to free ourselves from delusion, the first thing we need to do is to recognize when we are being deluded, okay? And so some of the types of delusion that Jack Kornfield talks about, some of them are more obvious than others. And the first one is not paying attention to the present moment, inattention. And we hear this a lot, be here now, make friends with the present, right? And one of the insights that I got from reading this chapter is that Jack talks about that this is particularly prevalent, that we have fractured attention spans in Western culture because we have, first of all, we've made almost a god of being busy. Busyness is seen as a virtue. Multitasking is seen as a virtue. And so our attention is constantly being split off into different directions, being pulled. And so what happens when we don't have something that's grabbing our attention? We can't stand to be bored. Oh, we can't stand to be bored, right? We need to be stimulated. We're constantly looking for the next fun thing to do, the next challenging thing to do, the next productive thing to do. And so when we don't have that right in front of us, we suffer. Or when we do and we get it, guess what? It's still not fulfilling, yeah, and we still suffer. So that's one of the things, is not being able to just be here now with whatever is in front of us, for always grasping, always futurizing. So that's one way we can become deluded, by thinking that our happiness lies in the future. Our happiness lies in this next task being completed. Our fulfillment lies in that. When we can be completely fulfilled just by being right here, right now. So another form of delusion is called denial. And we know we have our whole unity teaching on denials, which is different. This is just your regular garden variety. This is something right in front of me, and I'm pretending it ain't happening. Okay? So there's a story in the book about a man who's driving down the highway, and he's going, this is the miming for driving, right? This is how you drive normally. And he's listening to the radio, and all of a sudden the radio announcer says, anybody driving west on I-10, watch out. There is a driver going the wrong way on the highway. And he looks out his windshield and he said, there's not one driver going the wrong way, there's hundreds of them. So he is obviously in denial. So another time that we use denial is as a mechanism to avoid feeling pain. Right? Because we want to pretend something's not happening because we're almost afraid of the pain. I'll say, I'm almost afraid of the pain. Like, do I really want to feel this? What happens if I let myself feel this? And so tonight, you're going to get true confessions of just some of the ways that I have denied things myself. And I know you all won't tell anybody this. This is our secret that I'm going to share with you tonight. And as I read some of these, I just invite you to see which ones might resonate with you. And which ones you might judge me for. That's okay too. You're free to judge me. And which ones maybe that aren't on this list that you notice yourself doing. And before I make my confession, I just want to say this isn't about us making ourselves wrong for any of these delusions, right? It's simply about noticing, and noticing with compassion. And when we notice them with compassion, then we can release what no longer serves us, right? Okay, so here I go. Ready? One way I've denied things. I've denied that I was wrong about something because it was too embarrassing. That's wrong. I've denied that my feelings were hurt because I wanted to seem like a bigger person. I've denied that I had a preference for something just so I could avoid conflict. I've denied my attachment to my own opinions. And I feel like that needs an amen. You know how they say, beware when anybody starts a sentence that says, no offense, but. So it's the same thing. If you hear, I'm not really attached, but, well, there's some attachment there.
Amen.
Thank you, Rashida. I've denied my own biases, my own prejudices, my own assumptions for fear of looking like a bad person. I've done that. And I've denied my own ignorance in favor of appearing intelligent. And that's just some of them. That's just some of the ways I've denied. And what happens is we deny because we think if we admit these things, one of the reasons maybe we deny, if we admit these things, we give them power. But the truth is the opposite. It's when we can admit that we have these feelings, admit that, hey, we're human, hello, then it actually can dissolve. These things that have this energy can actually dissolve. When we try to repress, deny, or ignore, they may go away for a little while. It may hide, but the next time something occurs, the next time you're scared of looking, you have something to say, but you're scared of looking wrong, you won't be able to say it again. And instead, if you can start to recognize that those are the times, you can free yourself to be able to express yourself more and more authentically. Thomas Merton says this. I love this so much. He was a 20th century Trappist monk and a mystic. He said some beautiful things. And he said, in a world of tension and breakdown, does that sound familiar? In a world of tension and breakdown, it is necessary for there to be those who seek to integrate their inner lives, not by avoiding anguish or running away from problems, by facing them in their naked reality and their ordinariness. So what I love about this quote is that we are here to integrate the whole of our human experience. Yes, we are spiritual beings, and we are having a very human experience. So to deny that which is human is in fact really to deny our spirituality, because this is part of our expression as spirit. And so I love that he uses the word ordinariness, because sometimes we think it's those big things that get in the way of us knowing ourselves, the truth of who we are. But in fact, it's those little day-to-day kinds of things that every interaction is an opportunity to discover the truth of who we are, to be authentic in that moment. And I believe that if you are here tonight, or if you're listening to this tonight or any time, if you are drawn to New Thought or Buddhism or any spiritual path, there is a part of you that wants to look bravely at all of your delusions. I believe that. I believe that there is a part of you that is willing to confront every pain, to confront every delusion so that you can have freedom. And that part of you will settle for nothing less. And it's not a future moment. Like I said, it's happening moment by moment and moment. Your freedom is here. And so at the root of these delusions of denial, of not being able to be present, they are all undergirded by this idea. We have a slight misperception about reality, let's just say. We're slightly confused. And Jack Kornfield says we're slightly confused in three very important ways. We're confused about what happiness means, what it means to be happy, and what the causes of happiness are. We're confused about the importance of permanence, right? And we're also confused about the nature of our true self. And so one of the things that we're confused about with happiness, we've kind of talked about, is that we think happiness lies somewhere out there. And you could just fill in the blank. I'll be happy when this person realizes blank. I'll be happy when I have blank amount of money in the bank. I'll be happy when I get the next promotion, when I go on vacation, when I retire. I'll finally let myself be happy. Whatever it is, you can fill that in. And so the thing is, if we give things outside of ourselves the power to make us happy, if we imbue them with that, then they also naturally have the power to make us unhappy. So that leads us right into the idea of permanence and our understanding about permanence. You know, everything in this world that we inhabit is subject to change. We're not going to be here. This building won't be here at some point, right? Where it's all subject to change. And yet, when we believe that things on the outside create happiness for us, we want to cling to them, right? So we're not happy when we get them because we got to cling to them because we don't want them to go away. I'm happy right now. I'm happy in this relationship. I hope it never ends. I'm so happy in this new job. I don't ever want it to go away. Whatever it is, we cling. So even when we have the thing we thought would make us happy, our clinging creates suffering. And then guess what? If we lose it, we get to suffer some more because then we can want something else. So that's the mind's kind of trick there to keep us in a state of either clinging to what we already have or grasping for the next thing. So at the end of the happiness and the permanence, if we come to the root of that, I shouldn't say at the end, but at the root of both of those is confusion about the nature of who we are. And we've talked about this a lot through this series, is who do we think we are? You know, if you were to write a story about yourself, everything you've ever done, everything you ever thought, everything you've achieved, everyone you've known, all this, you would have files and files, right, of things about you. But that is not your life. That is a story about you. That is one story about you. You are an expression of the divine here to reveal the perfection of the divine in this world, to reveal love, to be a healing presence. These things, yes, they can be vehicles for that. Your job can be a vehicle for the healing of humanity. Your relationships can be a vehicle for love, but they simply by themselves are just stories. They're just things. It is when we know ourselves, truly can know ourselves as divine, that we are able to express ourselves authentically and to find true peace, true fulfillment. And so the other piece of this delusion conversation is, how do we release it? Okay, so we recognize that in ourselves perhaps when we deny or when we try to avoid pain. The 16th Buddhist principle that Jack Kornfield talks about in the book addresses this. It says this, that pain is inevitable, suffering is not. Suffering arises from grasping. We've talked about that. So we can release grasping and be free from suffering. So we've seen some of the ways that the mind does try to grasp and try to make things okay. I love this quote from Ramana Maharshi. He was a Hindu sage. He says that wanting to reform the world without discovering one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather so we can avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. Wouldn't it be easier just to put on shoes? So instead of trying to rearrange our life circumstances in a way that will never trigger us, never annoy us. Has anybody ever tried this? To only surround yourself perfectly with people that will just be shining beacons of love and light for you? You can do some of that, right? And too, though, know that there will be thorns. There will be stones. We will encounter pain. Suffering is when we continue to want to be with the pain. right? We can either just pick that thorn out of our foot after we step on it, or we can tell ourselves whole stories about nobody ever gave me a pair of shoes and I, got to walk on these thorns and nobody else has to. So that's our choice. Jack Kornfield also quotes a Zen master, and I'll close with this quote. It's the Zen master Dogen. He said this: one enlightened thought and you're a Buddha. One ordinary thought, and again, you're a deluded person. And so, for me, this is very good news. This is very, very good news, because even if you had 10,000 deluded thoughts today, even if you're like me and you've had 1,000,000 deluded thoughts in this lifetime, you are only ever one enlightened thought, one conscious breath, one moment of realization away from knowing your true self. And each time you come home to the truth of who you are, you come home a little deeper, a little more authentic, a little more free. And it's all happening right here, right now, moment by moment. God bless you. So my friends, may you meet your pain with compassion. May you meet the pain of others with compassion. May you know the true source of your happiness arises from within you. And may you release the grip on that feather and realize that you can simply just fly. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
She is about to be ordained a Unity minister. I feel like we need to break into I never promised you a rose garden. Oh, there's so much there, and I really appreciate all of that message. And one thing that I wonder about is when we deny these delusions, do they escalate? Like, does it try to get your attention more and more and more?
Oh, until you get that spiritual 2x4? Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes it's something we need to deal with, right? Or else it wouldn't be recurring, or we wouldn't be triggered by it. We wouldn't, have that coming up. So for me, I think I would see an escalation of deluded thoughts that recur, the patterns. Because when we create those patterns, we create those trenches that we stay in until we make a choice, like you said, make a conscious choice.
Stacy, I want to thank you for your message. Every time I hear you speak, it just moves me so much. Thank you. And those I have so many delusions. It's hard for me to know what I'm talking about. What Shirley just said, I want to piggyback on that for a few minutes, and that is, for me, I was in Hurricane Harvey, and so we were getting the messages and that there's flooding taking place, and I was in complete denial that the house was going to flood, that my neighborhood was going to flood, and so I didn't leave when other people in the home were asking me to leave. I'm like, oh no, we're not going to flood. So just like Shirley was saying, and what you've said in your talk, when we are in denial and we don't see it, then it just gets bigger and more luminous. So the house did flood, and we had to go to someone else's home across the street and go upstairs and be rescued the next day. So yes, I think that's a very important piece, is to be able to look at what is being presented to you and make peace with it. I felt like I probably was holding on so strong to my home, not wanting to leave, that I couldn't bear the pain of leaving it. So then it made the situation worse. And then when the whole home was flooded and everything was lost, I really had to come to that acceptance of letting go of, I didn't know if I'd ever be back in my home again. We were not in a flood zone. And so I didn't know whether I'd ever see that home again. And I really had to come to that place, as we do when we're trying to work through things, that I may not be back here again. I have to let go. I have to let go of all these material things that I thought couldn't live without, and find that happiness and that peace and that serenity within myself. I'm here breathing and alive. And that joy, as you said so beautifully in your message, comes from within, and comes from our divinity within. But it can be a slap in the face.
Well, that's
you know?
that's a huge one. That's so huge, and it doesn't always. It's true in big examples like that, and then also as Thomas Merton said, just in the ordinariness of daily life, that the mind, one of its jobs, wants to protect us from some kind of pain, right? It thinks that we're fragile because it thinks we're separate and individual only, right? And so, and Rev Sheila's an expert on Course in Miracles. The way Course in Miracles opens up is nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And if we can know that, we can be more comfortable with our pain, because we can know that we can hold it with compassion. And there's nothing, a moment of, what would you say, of discomfort, of that realization, like, oh, I've been wrong here. That's a hard one. I mean, I remember Eckhart Tolle saying, when the ego gets in an argument, it really thinks it's fighting for its death, because it is, and that's why a seemingly small argument can escalate to a feeling, you feel your heart pounding, you feel like, I've got to make myself know, that's the ego does not want to die that ego death. And if we realize there's nothing real that can be threatened here, there's that within us that is always whole, perfect, and complete, that could not be touched by any of the goings on in the world, then we can relax and be with it and not avoid it and not need that repeat reminder, as Shirley said.
Yeah, and I always like to take these out to a more global level too, a cultural level, because I think that there's so much that we deny as humanity, as Americans, as whatever group that, and I think that unresolved things do escalate and will come up to be confronted.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's the times we're living in now, where we get lots of opportunity to confront the past, deal with the past, overcome some of these denials and delusions that we think we're built on.
Yes, and we have to let it, what is it, reveal it to heal it, Rev Sheila? We've got to, because if we think that we can just repress things and pretend they're not there, they show up in all kinds of ways. And this is true, individually and collectively.
And that's what we're about, right? Transforming ourselves, that we may
serve the world.
Serve the world.
We'll do something in the world. Transforming our lives that we may serve the world. Yes. And I just want to say one final thing about that, because I'm glad you said that. I almost talked about the purpose statement here. Because at Unity Houston, it is that we, in community, we nurture and empower each other, transforming our lives that we may serve the world. And transformation sounds like a beautiful thing, right? And it is a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean it's also not messy or hard or difficult, and that we sometimes feel alone in it. And so I'm so grateful for this community that we can be there for each other. We can be that little mouse friend Dumbo had. Say, you can fly, buddy. If you just need to hold this feather, you can fly. To encourage one another, really. And so, I'm grateful for that.
Oh, I just want to say, me too. This community This community will hug you, lift you, love you.
No, they'll hug you all right.
Even if you don't love them.
Even if you don't love them.
No, it's the hands through whatever we're going through in this life experience, and the teachings definitely give us the tools to navigate.
They do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that also is a very important point, that one of our delusions is that we're alone. That only I feel this way. No one else can feel like I do. Only I've experienced this, and that is not correct.
No.
I think anything that one human being can feel or experience, any human being can feel or experience. And so the more we embrace that, speak to that, normalize that, just it helps us feel we're not alone, because we know we're not. We're in this together.
Oh, absolutely.
Of your dreams is already within you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.